Hi, this is Michael Yardney with my latest property update. Look, only a few days ago I was chatting with a friend, and as usual, the topic turned towards property. He asked me, Michael, why do you think you're right? How can properties keep rising in value with lower affordability and interest rates? And I started to explain about our changing demographics and our strong population growth, and how these are two fundamentals that I see underpinning our property prices. To which he interjected, but our population can't keep increasing at that pace either. Where are they going to put all those people? What about the water shortage? What about the infrastructure? How are we going to cope? It's interesting, isn't it, how talking about property values, affordability and population growth can lead to a heated discussion. I told him we're in store for a demographic tsunami. Now that's a term I must attribute to Professor Martin Bell from the University of Queensland's Centre of Population Research. I read an article by him. He was quoted in the Courier Mail as saying, Australia is on the crest of a demographic tsunami, with the first wave of 5.3 million baby boomers eligible for the aged pension. In fact, Professor Bell said, I'd rank this alongside the Industrial Revolution. Gee, that's a big statement. He said it's the kind of transition in the nature of Western society from a young, rapidly growing population which is broad at the bottom and thin at the top to one which is almost the other way round. Now that's a pretty profound statement. So how will this affect our economy? And more particularly, I guess for us as property investors, how's that going to affect our property markets? And to me, the conclusion is inescapable. But we've got no choice. We're going to have to populate or perish. Look at the facts this way. Today, 43% of our workforce is made up of baby boomers. People like me, people like Pam who's at the back of this camera here, people like a lot of the readers in this newsletter, people born between 1945 and 64. This means the first wave of that tsunami has already hit. The first wave of the baby boomers are now turning 65. And over the next 15 years, Australia's 5.3 million boomers are going to reach retirement age. And as they leave the workforce, they're going to stop paying taxes, and many are going to go on the pension. And most of them are going to use our public healthcare system. And we just know from all that's been in the news recently how much of a schmozzle that's in. You see, most of the baby boomers just don't have enough savings or superannuation to see them through retirement. This means many are going to have to, I guess some of them are going to have to keep working longer than they'd anticipated, but eventually, when they do retire, they're going to place a massive burden on our financial system. And the government's going to have to find money for their pensions and for their healthcare costs, and at the same time make up for their lost taxation revenue. And they can only do it in one of two ways, well, as far as I can see. Number one, what they could do is increase taxes from those in the workforce. If you think about it, that's really political suicide, isn't it? Or number two, I guess the only other thing I can imagine they're going to do is increase the size of the tax-paying workforce. And they do this by importing younger workers. Now, despite some of the rhetoric recently from the opposition and from Kevin Rudd appointing a population minister, there's really no choice. We've got to significantly increase our population. If you want to look at the alternative, just have a look at what's happened to those countries that have got an ageing population. Countries like Japan, like Germany, and to some extent, America. Now, interestingly, a new wave of growth has already started to flow onto our shores. Australia's population increased by 2.1% over the last 12 months. Now, that's interestingly double the world average of 1.1%. And as I'm sure you've read recently, some estimates of our population suggest we're going to increase by 60% in the next 40 years. Now, with net overseas migration currently running at close to 300,000 people a year, our population could even be significantly higher than that, because I've recently read that Treasury has estimated 180,000 population a year, net overseas migration a year, when they made those estimates of a population of 36 million by 2050. And their estimated 180, and we're getting almost double that coming in. Anyway, I'll discuss that a bit later, but first let's see where we are today. Only a few weeks ago, the Australian Bureau of Statistics said that there were 22,066,000 of us as of September last year. That's an increase of 451,900 over the previous 12 months. And of that, 2/3 of that growth, around 297,000 people, came in from immigration. According to RP data, over the last 12 months, or at least 12 months to June last year, the states that recorded the highest growth in population were New South Wales, having about 119,534 people come in, Queensland with 116,533, Victoria with again 116,250, and Western Australia with about 68,000 people. Now, interestingly, most of these people are moving to our capital cities, not to regional Australia. And this means the populations of Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane could each grow by over 1 million people in the next 10 years. If you break that number down, this means around 1,700 people a week are moving into Melbourne and similar numbers into Sydney and Brisbane every week. Remember, all these people need to either rent or buy a home. And most of these newcomers are going to want to live in inner suburbs, in our inner ring suburbs, in the middle ring suburbs, near hospitals, near schools, near work, near infrastructure. Where are we going to put them all? Clearly we're going to need more medium density dwellings. No wonder there's all this discussion about how we can cope with this type of population growth, and in fact whether we should allow it at all. There's no doubt that this substantial increase in population will bring with it many social, political, infrastructure and environmental concerns. But the end result's inevitable. We've got no choice. In the words of a famous Prime Minister, we must populate or perish. Our population will have to grow significantly, and this will have a massive impact on our property markets. One of the interesting statistics that our research at Metropole has shown is that about 30% of the dwellings that are going to be needed by 2030, 30% of the dwellings around in 2030 haven't even been built yet. The fact is the value of properties around Australia are going to increase significantly, as will our rents. But as always, some properties will outperform others. Those close to the centre of our capital cities or infrastructure and amenities are likely to outperform. Now, for years the baby boomers drove property markets, so another interesting question to ponder is, with around 150,000 baby boomers or so retiring each year, and if you think about it, that equates to 75,000 to, I don't know, maybe 100,000 households, because most will only have one or two people in them. What is going to be their preferred style of accommodation? I'm going to leave the answer to that to a future market update. But understanding the type of property that's going to be in continuous strong demand in the future will help you become a successful property investor. I guess the bottom line is the future is bright for property investors, and I'm going to keep you updated with the changes happening in our property markets in future market updates like this. But this is probably an appropriate time to remind you that in times like this, it's really going to be useful to have a great team of people around you, and there's nobody quite like the independent property investment strategists at Metropole. Remember, we have no properties to sell, but access to every property on the market. If you want to find out a bit more about what's happening in your local market and what our research suggests is in store for us, please join us at a free property briefing at our offices at our boardrooms in Melbourne, Sydney or Brisbane. Just click on the link below to find out more and reserve your place. If you're a serious investor, or if you're a business person, and especially if you're an entrepreneur, I'd suggest you join us at Wealth Retreat 2010 on the Gold Coast. It's going to be there between May 29th and June the 2nd. We've got some details if you click on the link below, where we're going to have a limited number of people. It's a small group of people, only about 50 coming to Wealth Retreat on purpose. And these are already highly successful investors, business people or entrepreneurs. It's easy for me to say entrepreneurs. This is your chance to immerse yourself for 5 days and get together and learn from a leading faculty of experts and network with a group of like-minded people. Please register your interest so we can send you more details just by clicking on the link below. And in between these market updates, you can follow my regular property news updates on Twitter. This is Michael Yardney. Have a great week. Make it a great week.